All right, the time is now 6:30. Members present in person. Charles, Kim, Brandon, Carrie, and Don. Uh, no members present remotely. The meeting of Public Works has a quorum. I called the meeting to order. And this will be my last one as chair. So,
What? Really?
yeah, really.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Um, so the first item on the agenda, the minutes from 4/14/25. Are there any corrections that people would like to offer to the minutes? Hearing none, I accept the minutes as they were submitted by Sean. Next item on the agenda, concrete repair determination of deficiencies. And Tom is with us. So Tom, if you'd like to walk us through that memo.
What we look at here is the state of Wisconsin requires that the Public Works Committee find the sections that we've looked at as being deficient, that you must find them to be deficient, and then we can send out a letter in the next couple of weeks here to notify the property owners of these deficiencies and to give them a 2-week or a 20-day time period in which to make corrections before we have crews come in. Right at this point in time, we're looking at about $120,000 for the sidewalk itself, replacement of bad sections caused by either tree roots or other damaged sections. Leaves us about $40,000 in here, which we use for saw cutting or eliminating trip hazards. So we have mud jack crew comes in, and then a saw cutting crew or grinding crew comes in and gets rid of those trip hazards. So we also noticed that we had North High Point Road traffic calming in there. That bid came in way higher than what we expected, so we're seeking other quotes and bids on that, and we keep you posted with that. As soon as we come up with something, we'll let you know. And Hawk Ridge Park is a project that is done by the Parks Department. And they just are running on our shirt tails here to have a company come in and perform work for them. So they both have separate budgets. They're not considered part of ours, but both of those will be separate projects in there. So pretty much we're just looking to have the Public Works Committee make a determination on our findings so that we can send out our notification letter here in the next few weeks. Any questions?
I don't have any questions.
I don't.
I can make the motion to determine that the staff or committee determine the need for corrective action to address deficiencies in concrete abutting the properties listed on the spreadsheet.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thanks, Tom. Now you got something to do tomorrow.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Okay, and next item on the agenda, 6300 University Ave plan approval.
Sure. And so this is one of two agenda items. We're bringing the plans and the city developer agreement to you at the same time. But for that redevelopment project at 6300 University Avenue, which is an existing building, but that'll be demolished and turned into an apartment building. Part of the work involves construction of some public sidewalk, some of which is there now, and also the installation of a new public storm sewer that'll be along North Gateway Street. So that'll be out in the right of way. So for that, we'll need the city developer agreement, and this portion then is just the plan approval which can be done by Public Works Committee without having to go anywhere else. And so I've listed a series of suggested contingencies on approval, but there really aren't any other plan changes needed. This is just some additional review, and I had just recently heard Plan Commission needs to take a look at that loading zone parking area that got added to the entry driveway off of University Avenue that we previously looked at as part of a revised TIA. They just hadn't seen that yet, so I don't expect any surprises or showstoppers. I see Connor Nett is on the call tonight, so if there are any specific questions, I'm sure he can address them. But with that, staff is recommending approval with contingencies.
I'll move approval with contingencies.
Myers, I'll second. And it was the contingencies listed in the
In the agenda.
agenda. Okay. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Plan approval with contingencies listed in the agenda carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda, city developer agreement.
Yeah, so this is the companion piece to that by which the developer will make specific agreements about building the improvements intended to be public, so they'll build up to our specs, to our standards, and in a certain time frame with surety. Like any other city developer agreement, this is just a really boiled down version of it because it's only sidewalk and a little bit of storm sewer, so pretty light on the scope of work. And again, then this is recommended by staff with some contingencies. And not that the agreement needs any changes, we just want to be sure the stuff that goes with it is actually in-house before we move forward. It's like the stormwater management system maintenance agreement, the final version of the approved plan drawings, so that those contingencies are all satisfied before we start building them. And then satisfaction of the city attorney with the agreement. We generally put that in on these kinds of things, but the city attorney has seen this format of agreement over and over, so I would not expect there.
I'll go ahead and make that motion that the committee recommends the Finance and Personnel Committee Common Council approval of the city developer agreement contingent upon the items listed in the agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion from Carrie, a second from Kim. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda, 6300 University Ave Water Main Replacement Task Order with Strand Associates for Engineering Services.
Yeah, and so while we were looking at this 6300 University Avenue reconstruction project, one of the things that caught our eye is there's a fairly narrow easement area that has sanitary sewer and water main at a good separation, but not a lot of elbow room for replacing the water main, which is older and has a break history. So while that site is under reconstruction, it won't need water, and that affords us an opportunity then to relay new water main on the same alignment as the existing water main, because we can kill service in that stretch. Take the old water main out, put new water main in, which if we waited with this, we would not have that opportunity. We'd have to look for different alignment for the new water main to keep the old one in service. And that'll be much more difficult. So So our staff recommendation is to engage Strand for a very quick design and bidding and construction experience to get this main in that segment, effectively between University Avenue and Mound Drive, just to the north, replaced while that site doesn't need water.
And who ultimately pays for that, Sean?
The water utility.
Okay.
And this will be more cost effective for the water utility than if we had to replace it.
And physically possible.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So the utility pays for the construction, but the city pays for the engineering.
The water utility pays for the whole thing.
So what are we approving or wanting to do
Well,
with Strand?
Yeah, so we're the board of directors of the water utility, so we would advise finance committee and common council, let's allow use of some of this undesignated, unallocated water utility money to bump up this replacement, because it's not a budgeted project. We just launched into it and looked at it and thought we should do this right now, not next year.
I'll make that motion that the committee recommends to the Finance and Personnel Committee and the Common Council authorizing the use of the water utility funds for the proposed task order with Strand Associates. Do you need me to list the amount? Would that be helpful?
So it'd be, yeah,
$29.
$29,900. And I'll talk to Bill Burns too, because we may need a budget amendment to make that work. But then he can get that into the council packets if you're all amenable to that.
Sure.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and second that motion then.
There any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Brandon, I'm sorry, I didn't hear one either. Did you mean?
Sorry, did I? In favor of it?
All right, awesome. I just wanted to make sure that you didn't mean to abstain or something.
I think my voice left me.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. On to the next item, water meter reading. Mike, if you're here and you want to walk us through your memo.
Yep, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. So this is something that has come about quite quickly that it's developed. I had planned on working this closer towards the budget season. Due to the inability to receive product right now, is why you're seeing this bumped up and why it's on here today. The city has historically purchased Itron ERT boxes. Those are the radio transmitters that we wire to the meter. That's what pushes the signal out to catch the read. We're struggling to get the ERT boxes from Itron. Itron has also, in the last year, told us that in the next couple of years, they will no longer be supporting the type of reading system that the city has implemented for the last 10-ish years. We would have to upgrade, and that they're going to go with a cellular version. So now you're going to end up working and negotiating with a cellular company. You're going to be working with Itron, and of course, we would have to invest some more money to basically change some things up. Instead, the meters that we purchase are from Census, the company. We purchase iPearls and we purchase Omnis are the bigger meters, anything from an 1.5 meter on up. Those meters get wired to Itron ERT boxes now. Census also has an ERT box that works right in sync with the current reading system that the city has and will continue to work with what the city has. And eventually, with what Census is providing, is an option to eventually someday go to what a lot of places are going to, which is a fixed base. So basically, Sarah would be able to sit in the basement. There would be probably 1 or 2 tower transmitters, and this is way down the line. We can keep doing what we're doing right now, if we do work with census. But if like the far goal of it would be to fix base a couple of antennas on, either Tower 2 or Hillcrest area, and with the touch of a button, Sarah can get a read from a house instantly. You also start talking about extra options for the customers where we can pick up leak detection. Those meters kind of talk to the system constantly, let us know what's going on with our customers. But like I said, that's down the line. But right now, we are struggling to get ERT boxes from Itron. So this has led us to look outside the box, which was with Census. We did a test run with Census, actually driving the whole city. They plugged in our route. They put in literally the Itron reading equipment in the utility vehicle versus the Census reading equipment in the utility vehicle, or it's literally the same type of equipment. It's almost apples for apples. However, when we read the city last week when we did this trial, and there was about 6 of us that were all kind of monitoring this and involved with it, they went out and read the city in just exponentially faster amount of time. What usually takes us 3 days to get through a route in the city and get all the reads for Sarah for quarterly billing is now looking like if we would go to census, we could probably get that done in less than a day. So there's time gains with this. There's a lot of good things by changing. Of course, change is scary, but we can get census ERT boxes right now, and that's kind of where we're at with this. This has kind of forced our hand to going away because we cannot get the product that we need right now when we are starting to run low. I hope that makes sense.
I have a
Yep.
question. Is the census, so they use radio? Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
So Itron uses a different frequency at a different power level than Census is using, and that's where Mike is saying some time savings comes in because it'll transmit further, so we can pick up data faster. The bigger difference is availability of these units. So it's not the physical meter that's measuring the water, it's just that radio transmitter that's sending a signal to our reading equipment. That's difficult to come by with Itron. But the census transmitters work with the equipment we've already got. So it's a different manufacturer of that radio transmitter that's available. And the other problem is that Itron is moving away to something where they want cell-based service instead of radio-based service, in which case we'd be dealing with a third party that they're under contract with, but we're paying the freight for. So if that third party company changes or changes their rates, we're on the hook for it. And we don't really have control of that. To the degree we can, we'd rather stay with radio.
Right.
And Itron's walking away from that.
Is there any indication that census would eventually walk away from it too? Or,
There's always that possibility.
yeah, but not,
The good thing with a radio frequency that you have control over from the FCC, you get to use it. Right? It's pretty low cost for them. They don't have to negotiate with a cell carrier.
yeah.
So it's attractive for them not to have to do that.
The way that I also understand is that Itron's frequency is it's a non-secure network signal, and Census has secured what they're doing with their product. That's how they're able to read through the Itron radios, because they don't have a license to the FCC, where Census does, and they can run more power, picking up more reads. And again, Census currently, right? I mean, they can always change their mind, but currently they are focused on fixed base and going that route, as well as, continuing mobile operations until down the line can go to the AMI, which is AMI versus AMR. So fixed base.
How long would it take to switch over the read equipment from Itron census?
Do you mean citywide or like right now? Like just to stay in the game.
I guess maybe both, like both questions.
So that's a tough question because I myself have been changing meters out. We started putting iPearls in back in, I have to be doing at least 15 years now, and we're somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 meters away from being done. There's 7,000 ish meters in the city. We have to test X amount of meters every year, um, as commissioned by the PSC. So we test our set amount. We're on a 20-year changeover. So we kind of just stick to that pattern. So basically you're looking at a 20-year program until we would actually get to that fixed base entirety. So but until then we would go to radio, and the radio equipment, they had it right along with us the other day. It's as simple as basically signing the contracts
Okay.
and making that switch. And it does work with our current billing system, which is Cassell.
Oh, that's good.
Is that a compatibility question though? Like, can we have both in our system at the same time?
That's a good, yeah,
And
yeah.
we can, so
We can, okay,
we don't have to get rid of the old equipment to get the new equipment into our system.
okay,
They can
Okay.
both run.
got it. Yeah. It seems like it's a good option. It seems like it's a required option. So I feel like there's,
Yeah.
I think I'd make the motion, the committee recommend to the Finance and Personnel Committee and Common Council authorization to use the water utility capital meter funds to begin switching radio read equipment from Itron to census.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion?
I was gonna ask Mike if he knows what the cost difference is for like on a per meter basis of the census versus the legacy system that you were using.
And did you see the price differences? Were they sent to you? They should have been, otherwise we can make sure you get them.
Yeah, I don't think I included those in the packet, just your memo.
Okay.
Because it gets a little bit detailed about how their costs shake out, but there's
Yeah.
a fixed cost to set it up. Although there would be with Itron too. And then Itron also had a cell cost per meter if it's so and so many, categories of meters, right? So if you get enough of them, the cell cost per meter drops a bit. But it was like $12 a year for the cell service instead of free for the radio. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, our water bills are kind of low. So percentage wise, it starts to skew that even if it's just $3 a quarter.
Right.
That's not really going to service. That's just going to reading it. So yeah, there are some setup costs either way. And I think the census transmitters are a little bit more expensive than the Itron meters are. But again, with the Itron meter, you have to start getting the cell service, and then it gets way more expensive.
And then it sounds like there's staff time saved if it takes 3 days compared to.
It'll save, yeah. I mean, we used to, do it by hand, house by house.
Right.
That took weeks. So 3 days, we thought this is as good as it's ever gonna get.
Mhm.
But one day is slightly better. Take it.
2004 is when the city went, finally basically had changed out their last meter and everything was radio transmitting, other than Harvey Barches, if you remember that, John.
Oh, but that house is gone, right?
Yep, correct. But so the city has been radio transmitting for 20 years now, and that's kind of the line we want to continue. And there was price differences right off the bat for initial equipment. If we did want to stick with Itron, they did give us an amount of money that was it was higher. Like, Sean, can I say the amount ish?
Yeah.
It was like 15,000 more just for the initial equipment on the Itron end versus the census side of things. The census stuff was a little cheaper, more cost effective. However, as Sean mentioned, the transmitters themselves are a little bit more expensive, but you gain that back when you realize what the cellular cost per endpoint will be that will end up rolling onto the customer in the end.
Right, and that never stops. That just keeps going. So the equipment is sort of a one-time thing, but the cell service is not. So we can send that information out. I didn't want to throw it all in the packet because it gets a little granular and pretty confusing. But
Yeah, I don't think it's needed.
the upshot is, yeah, do we want A or B? And cell service, I would recommend against.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think ratepayers are gonna be thrilled about an extra $12 a year, which will only go up in price as the cost of cellular data goes up. So,
Yeah, it just keeps going.
Mhm.
That and the biggest thing is that we literally need those transmitters and we can't get them. And
yeah,
John has been promising us answers for the last basically 6 weeks. And we'll call you Friday and we'll have an update for you. We'll call you Friday and we'll have an update for you. And we're just running low on product, and that is what has forced this hand.
yeah, if they can't meet their deliverables, then.
Yep.
All right, so we had a motion and a second.
Mhm.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
I,
Aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. On to water and sanitary sewer utility facilities condition evaluation. All right, Mike.
This is a biggie. This was a huge project that Strand and Associates took on throughout the 2024 year. Their conclusions were in, you can see the report. It's 200-ish pages long. Basically, we know we need to do some there's some minor things that we need to do, some simple things that we can do in house, and then there's other things that we're going to have to put out to bid as we get to the facilities. This year we're working on well 5, as well as SCADA upgrades to Maywood. Baskerville is currently getting an electrical upgrade that was already budgeted for 2024. That's still happening right now, about ready to finish that one up. So some of the things that are in the report are actually being worked on as we speak. And that's basically what the utility will do. It will prioritize the facilities that are in the greatest need for that maintenance and for those upgrades. And I don't know if you want to go facility to facility or how in depth you'd want to get into it. I also know Ryan Wood is with us. Ryan's been great with us.
An unsolicited plug. Well done. Well done. Yeah, it's clear there was a lot of work put into this. And I think it was time and money really well spent to get a handle on what our system is and what our system needs are to program ourselves into the future. And I very much appreciate it that it's spread out over a period of years instead of you need to do all these things. Good luck. Right? Because we also need to pay for all these things. So,
And if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority.
right?
yeah, very true.
Any surprises that came up in the report that we weren't expecting that have to maybe get put into an earlier budget than anticipated?
I think part of our problem is we didn't have a really good handle at all on what was needed, other than really obvious things, right, that we could just see. But Mike is pretty new to this role. I'm a little bit on the outside of, the utilities' daily operations or maintenance needs. So that's part of what drew us to saying, well, look, institutionally, we don't have as much memory as we used to. So let's just start from the top down and figure out where we are and where we should be.
Yeah, I think to add maybe to that is historically Middleton, when they've done their utility master planning, has mostly looked at capacity, future growth, things like that, which are pretty typical. And your capacities of your infrastructures are pretty good on both the water and the wastewater side, looking out, at just what the capacities are. We weren't really anticipating new infrastructure needed to serve growth until probably 2040. But what Middleton hasn't really done, I've been with Strand for almost 20 years now, and worked in Middleton the entire time, is we've never taken a step back to look at the facilities and say, well, yeah, this well has a capacity of 1,200 gallons per minute, but the electrical gear is 65 years old, right? Middleton's done a good job of doing like the well rehabs for the well hole, but they've never really looked at the condition of the facilities. And that's where we brought an electrical engineer, a mechanical, structural, and a process to each site to look at and say, how long can this last, and what can we kind of update to keep it going? So that's where this report had focused, and that's where most of the recommendations came from. So
Yeah, and to get us code compliant, I don't want to discount that there are some safety issues that we need to be cognizant of, that when you walk into this physical building day after day, you sort of don't see that until someone says, wait a minute, that's not a good work environment. This really should be up to current code. So that's in here too.
Are these types of reports like on a 5-year cycle or 10-year cycle, or when's the last time we did one in?
I don't think you've ever done one of these.
We have
Never.
not in 31 years, and almost certainly not before that.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's so valuable, is it gives us a baseline, and it also lays out a map for the future, and critiques what needs the attention more than some of the other things. We've also, with, as you see our agenda today, that the water utility is heavy with projects. We are having to take on a lot of challenges right now. We know there's a lot of big things ahead of us with the well 7. We know eventually well 4 will be, we will cap that eventually. There's a lot of upcoming things. This northern loop that's coming, we're trying to stay ahead of a lot of, the growth that is happening and that we're seeing with Middleton. So, and this report, helps lay the groundwork to set those projects, in a time sensitive manner.
Exactly. So
That's great.
this is
Yeah.
big term planning.
Yeah.
These are not small numbers at the end of the day. So while the utility has enjoyed being on a cash basis for a pretty long time, I'm not certain that we won't have to take on some debt, at least for a period of time, to get some things done that need to get done as we work ourselves back toward sort of better financial footing. Not that debt is bad. Most utilities have that. We've just been really blessed for quite a long time that we don't.
Yeah, that's great that you guys did this. Good.
Basically, you're just looking for our approval of the report and essentially planning for section 2024 so they can establish schedules and budget.
Exactly, yeah. So this will be a help to Mike in putting together budgets and long-term planning to get things lined up to take care of these as action items.
I'll make that motion that we approve the plan as submitted for planning purposes and budget purposes.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Our next item, North Water Main Loop Planning.
Doesn't this come up every 2 years?
We've been talking about it in general terms for a while. And so one of the things we had asked Strand to take a look at is what are our options? What's the feasibility of those options? What's the cost? And how do we sort of pick something and get going? And what really drove this to be a more pressing issue, I would say, is that in Century Avenue, where we have two parallel water mains, one somewhat newer than the other one. So we have a 10-inch main and an 8-inch main. Number one, at the time, there was very little development north of Century Avenue. There was Orchid Heights neighborhood. There were the apartments a little bit further east. But once the North Lakes and Bishop's Bay development started happening, we've been putting a lot of pressure on these two water mains that run down Century Avenue and cross a bridge at basically the same place. So our risk assessment is we would want that someplace else, but the condition and age of the 8-inch main is also helping push us toward, we'd rather get rid of this thing, right? So if we're going to get rid of it, are we going to rebuild something else in Century Avenue or someplace else? And that was the question. Century Avenue is planned right now for resurfacing in 2029. And that's part of what then drove the timing of this question, is if we need to get planning for something else, we need to get started on that plan. So we don't have to build it next year or even the year after, but it would be ideal if we had something in place by 2029 so that we'll know what to tell the county about the resurfacing project.
Where's the Belzer Road again?
Let me jump to map.
I feel like I've looked, yeah, you're right, down, we've looked at
Dude.
it several times.
Oh my
but-
God.
But I
Is
just wanna-
people all contributing to this?
Do you know where Middleton Baby and Child Care Center is?
Mhm.
Just
I remember,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
north.
we've had lots of conversations about this, but just thought we
Yeah.
had to look at the map again.
Sure. Get it on the screen for
That's a
everybody
good,
while
Don, I
I'm
think you
here.
should ask that question though. What was your question?
Mine?
Yeah.
Is TUAL contributing to this since it's for their subdivision?
Yeah, so this is largely the Balzer road alignment that we had already designed and at one point bid in
Right.
2016, but didn't build.
Right.
And that was to support the development of the community of Bishop's Bay. That's still on the board. It's been delayed several times, and I think most recently it was allowed to be deferred. And again, this would be a Middleton Utility District #1 project. We set up a whole separate utility
Right.
district for this. But I can't remember which date. I thought 2040, maybe. I'd have to double check that. So not 2030, which would be better yet. But the idea was that the city would build and construct this, borrow the money necessary to make it happen. And then Bishop's Bay would pay us back over time.
Mhm.
And as plats come in, by plat. So that's how we would get paid back by the community of Bishop's Bay. And the intention was that, yes, they would pay back Middleton Utility District #1, the entirety of our costs. That was the plan. with this, to try to get rid of the dual water main and move it to one of these optional routes, up to and including Balzer Road route. It's an open question as to whether Middleton Utility District number 1 then would just defer getting those payments back from the community of Bishop's Bay. And that'll be, I think, a policy discussion for consideration. So just because we're building it early, I would say doesn't preclude the opportunity to get paid back.
Right.
But the timing of that may be open for discussion. And I'm not familiar enough with the PSC rules to know how the financing is going to be allowed, because I think for something of this size, they'd need to give specific project construction authorization. And part of it is they'll want to know, well, what's our revenue of that? And it's a fair-sized expense.
Yeah, PSC is gonna want to know if it's over 8 inch and longer than, is it 3,000 feet, or is it?
Yeah, it was something, we're
Something
gonna
like
be
that,
past.
yeah, and you're past that, then you have to do the construction authorization through the PSC, which is a process, environmental reviews, all of that, but financially, they're going to want to know how it's getting paid for, and then they always ask the question is, should the general ratepayers pay for this project, or is this project helping out one group of people in particular, and should that group be paying for that? And that's probably more for like an industrial growth, type project, which would be more common, but they'll be asking those questions about this size of project too. And, however that conversation goes will probably either aid or not in that discussion with how this gets paid, is my guess.
Yeah, so it's a good question and we don't have an answer for it just yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I would envision that a big beneficiary of this, in fact, can't happen without it, is the continuation of the community of Bishop's Bay.
Yeah.
And that was an early discussion.
Yeah, I remember that.
This is the same route as we had already gotten PSC construction authorization for. And we had permission from the town to go in the road right of way. We just didn't do any of it.
So, yeah, I don't know all the background. I think some of it happened before I came here, but what caused the delay? Or, you said you had it already designed and planned out.
I think it was the financing from the community of Bishop's Bay.
Yeah, they sort of said, hey, we're not developing that quick. We don't need it. That was pretty much the argument.
And then they sort of went off and started developing on the town side that didn't specifically need this, but the planned development still does. So we looked at these routes like, well, could we get under the Conservancy or across the north side of Fredericks Hill? What's now the county's land that had been intended as growth area. And they said no. So while that was an attractive option to have looked into, there wasn't a really great reception at the county level.
And the risk right now is it's not a closed loop system, right? It's just a one-way.
Well, it's technically two independent mains running through here. They're just both in the same place, right? So
yeah, and we did a model looping to the north versus just using the two loops down there. And there's significant hydraulic improvements going in north. So
Got it.
that's the long-term right way to loop this.
Got it. So then the question is, Sean, should we just start this conversation? Like, is that the motion for tonight? Is like have Strand start to re-engage options again? Or like dust these plans off? Is that
would be effectively to number one, settle on an option.
okay?
So we have these three options, but this one seems probably infeasible, just getting through the marsh and conservancy area.
Yeah,
This one seems uphill at best, you know, getting county approval and permission. There just really wasn't any support at the staff level.
yeah. If the PSC already kind of approved the other one, it makes sense to go with the
Yeah,
Balzer Road.
yeah.
And that does mesh with our long-term planning, which is something we always want to keep an eye on too.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you know, we had originally, at the time of the community of Bishop's Bay, Middleton Utility District was looking at an extension of 12-inch all the way down to basically here.
Yeah,
But all of that now is effectively being picked up by Redtail Ridge as the development, with some reinforcement through Pheasant Crossing. So we won't need to build this section of Maine, well, probably not this piece either, if they upsize this piece. That's something we decided to leave up to the developers. They have option A or option B, and we don't need to worry about that. It will be almost certainly easier and cheaper for them to build within their developments 12-inch main in place of 8-inch main, instead of building 8-inch main and 12-inch main.
True.
But that's up to them.
Okay.
So this won't all happen at the same time. But again, if we're building pieces in conformance with our long-term plan, that's how we'll get there.
okay.
So let me bounce back to,
Yeah, I think the North Main is by far the best option.
Yeah,
Because you don't want to deal with Conservancy or the county in this.
agree.
yeah,
Going through their Conservancy lands is probably a tough
That's
sell.
that's a non-starter.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
for you.
I agree, that option is less feasible.
yeah, so that's staff recommendation at this point is just to approve the letter report that summarizes what we've done so far at a concept level. And then to endorse planning for construction of that northerly loops. Ideally to have it in the ground and complete by 2020.
I'll make that motion, Sean.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion?
I mean, I sound like the funding thing was going to be the obstacle in the agreement with Bishop's Bay, so are we endorsing it? Assuming just not considering cost or funding at all, just endorsing the route?
Well, I think part of what we're gonna task our consultant, well, Ryan, with is to help shepherd and guide us through PSC approval for construction authorization. And part of that'll be an internal, you know, city/developer discussion about how does Middleton Utility District get paid? So
Absolutely.
that'll take on this cost,
Yeah.
but how and when it gets paid is gonna be of interest to PSC anyway. So
Sure.
without that, we don't have a project.
And that's the part of the planning for construction. So it's basically we're engaging Strand to do that, to
Okay.
plan for
I
it.
think that'll need to be part of that scope. Now, I mean,
Yeah.
Strand can't drive that boat, but they can help guide us through the discussions that we as the city need to have.
Terrence come to another meeting.
Yeah.
It might not be one.
And we're looping in Matt on this, correct?
Fleming?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't at this stage, no, but at
Yeah.
the financing and agreement stage, we have to, because
Yeah.
we've already got this agreement. It would take some sort of amendment or negotiation to figure out, well, how do we change that, or to what degree? Are there beneficiaries other than the community of Bishop's Bay? Because when we sat down and looked at that, that was the beneficiary.
Yeah.
It
Right.
was a much
Yeah.
bigger project.
Right.
Period.
Yeah,
So
it
you
was a
said
huge
that-
project. It was like, what, 4 phases or something?
So
Yeah.
that
10?
agreement was already decided on
That's in
for
place.
funding.
That could
Yeah.
Just they changed, or they decided something happened on
They
their end.
deferred, right, like,
It
or,
was amended a couple of times. Once, I think, to delay it from 2016 to 2019 or 2020, and then quite a bit longer, and I think to 24. I'm not certain.
Okay.
It's gonna be way
Probably
less expensive.
just Don, Sean and I are the only one.
It's a lot
Then-
shorter now,
I
right?
know, I
Yeah,
know.
it is actually shorter, but costs have gone up.
Yeah.
That was always
Okay.
a thrown.
Yeah, we got a really good bid in 2016.
But it's that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying,
In 2016, Bishop's Bay was, gangbusters. We're gonna go, we're gonna go, we're gonna go, and all of a sudden, no, we're not. So, yeah, it was part of the issue.
I don't have any more discussion. Charles, thank you. All right, we have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
I,
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. So now we are on to fluoride in drinking water.
Right. So we'll call this the easy one. In a nutshell, the really short version, the one sentence version of this is, as we're looking at well 5, we've got a physical plant question being raised that right now we have our fluoride and chlorine in the same room, and they need to be in separate rooms. But then we have other facilities that are in the same boat, right? And so we'll need to upgrade them too. So if we want to continue adding fluoride, then we're answering a question about what physical plant improvements do we want to make both now and in the future. And in aggregate, I think the way it laid out in the memo is we're talking about $1 million of physical plant upgrade in addition to the operating costs. So while I fully expect that the city will want to continue adding fluoride, this is a good time for staff to bring this back as a policy question before the utility spends $1 million to just make sure we're comfortable with the current practice policy. So.
What do you need on this, a motion or consensus?
I think if you made some sort of motion about direction, intention, and I suspect making some sort of recommendation even to the council, because it's probably a bigger policy issue than just the Public Works Committee and the water utility. It's a citywide policy issue. I think that would probably be the best way to go.
So, council, has this come up at all, the use of fluoride, since DeForest misguidedly decided not to?
Not in my tenure.
Because I would like to make the motion that we continue utilizing fluoride and pass that motion and recommendation on to city council.
I would strongly second that because just so you all know, like I grew up in a rural area where we had well water, so no fluoride. And my dentist prescribed like the fluoride tablets. And as a kid, I didn't take them. I have so many cavities in my teeth so I'm like,
You're the
it
poster
works.
child
Yes.
for having fluoride in
Yes,
your
it
water.
works.
Pound the podium.
Yes, yes.
It was like taking malaria pills in Vietnam. Nobody did that either.
Right.
Yeah, then we can just take that to the council as an endorsement of Public Works Committee to continue. And then we'll take their direction moving forward, but at least we'll know what to do with well 5 as a design issue and going forward.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye. All opposed, hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. All right, and now we're back to everyone's favorite policy that Sean has worked very hard.
There.
on for-
It keeps getting
Wait,
better.
Yeah.
Sean, it's doing a great
Yeah.
job now. I can always find a parking spot downtown. Thank you.
All right.
Nice.
On-street accessible parking. So we sent this back to Ped Bike and Transit for any additional comments or changes they'd like to the policy. Looks like their motion was to endorse the policy as drafted while requesting to remove 2 locations under priority 2, which
And those are the sort of bay parking spaces along the south side of Mendota Avenue and along the west side of Middleton Beach Road, next to what is now a vacant lot planned for development at the soccer fields by Ellen Boulevard. And so I didn't take them off as much as added a note to defer them until the design and layout of that site is better known. So if I scan up to 2. So I just instead added this note just to defer the designation or implementation of accessible parking in those 2 bay areas till we know more about it. We have other things to do in the meantime, and that's fine. The other change that I made most recently, so this committee had not seen it, was to break some of these areas into blocks, because the way that it's written in the public rights of way accessibility guidelines, or PROWAG, is who doesn't want another acronym?
Especially when it's fun.
I PROWAG, say it a lot, is to effectively it's saying, well, you can consider the internal connected areas as a block and then just meet the accessibility requirements for spaces someplace along that block. Right? They don't all have to be in each individual little street segment if they're connected. And so I started reorganizing and labeling some of those things, like these are connected areas, so accessible parking along that zone can be considered as a thing. Sort of the same with B and C and so on. Some of the other areas are just remote and kind of unto themselves as far as signed and or marked stalls, which is the only things right now that this applies to. So just because you can park off to the side of the road, if it doesn't have signs regulating parking in any way or markings themselves, you don't have to provide accessible parking. Now, if that was just a priority thing that ProWag came up with, but that's just the way it is right now. So they said effectively, if it's just residential or just business or whatever, you don't have to worry too much about that. And so by ordinance, these are for the most part the areas that are signed and marked. Other than we have some off in the middle of Deming Way at Greenway Station, where we have marked parking, and up on Tribeca Drive near the apartments, we have some marked parking.
Has there been any comments from the public on your added parking spots?
I had heard secondhand some comments about the very downtown stuff, so that's why we did that last fall.
Okay.
In advance of putting together a plan.
No, I know. Has there been any negative comments with
No.
regard to what you got there? So,
No.
okay.
I haven't heard good or bad.
Okay.
But I've seen it used, so I take that as.
Like I
good.
said, whenever I go downtown, I'm glad they're there.
Don's parking, I'll put a sign up.
It's got my sign.
Yeah, so I think, number one, we didn't hear a whole lot about the lack of it, but now that it's here, people are using it. So obviously there was some grinding of teeth. They just didn't make a phone call. Okay, so it's heartening that it's used.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a constituent that had reached out to my predecessor and then to me at the very beginning of my term saying, hey, this should be under review. And I wrote back saying that there was and haven't heard anything positive or negative from that person, but I'll take a no response as a positive.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's only very recent that it became a law. It was guidance prior to then.
Yeah.
It's literally last summer. And I'm not even certain that it applies to us as a municipality, but it at least is a law with some application, so it's more than just guidance now. So I don't know if there are other changes before I hand this off to the next Public Works Director, but I didn't see myself any place to change or improve this, so that's why I brought it back.
Yeah, this is really, really good, Sean. Thank
I'm
you.
gonna put a smiley face on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
I move we put a smiley face on it.
You should. This has been a year of a lot of hard work
Yeah,
and a lot of different discussions, and we have something great to pass on budget for.
Yeah.
So
I think this will be good.
thank you. I move that we approve the draft policy with implementation to be considered in future budget requests in consideration of priority and planned roadway improvements.
second.
Is it, go ahead, sorry.
Motion, we have a second, further discussion.
Is it a draft or is it a final?
Well, it's a draft right now, but if it gets approved, then
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Has to be
got it.
approved by council.
we've done it two different ways, and I think for something like this, I'd be fine if it's approved by the Public Works Committee. It's
Okay.
frankly, it's to give staff guidance on what they're doing.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
You moved approval?
Yes.
Okay. And I seconded.
Yeah. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Great, thank you all thank you, Sean, for your work to make Middleton a more accessible place.
Others helped. We had input from Obitz, we had input from Brian Gatta for city administrator. So
Yeah.
Okay, liaison briefings with no discussion or action.
And if you don't want to stay, Ryan, don't feel like you have to.
Looks like you got her.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close.
Actually, don't say anything bad about me when I walk away.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that would do that.
Mutter it, my hearing's shut.
So, Conservancy Lands Committee, we have not met since my last,
Probably don't want you to run a water main through the conservancy.
they probably don't. So I have nothing to report. Carrie,
I'm no longer on liaison.
yes, that's correct.
Yes.
That's the update.
Yes, that's the update.
Was
I checked with Mark because they were supposed to meeting. And I'm like, should I be coming? And he said, no. So I think,
Okay. Gee, if Mark's.
Well.
I don't know.
God, yeah, I agree.
Okay, I thought that was effective until early June. Let me look into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me know if I should still be going.
all right, and Don.
Water resources we discussed that would relate to this group and water is salt usage on the roads in Middleton. What we can do to reduce that, more related to the ponds, obviously, but it came up. Oh my God, it's in the water wells. So that was partly what was brought up, but we're looking at that and they're gonna try and figure out how to use it as salt. So it's a good thing for water resources to do because they're not concerned about public safety. But that was the discussion that only related to this group.
Okay,
And yeah, so I did talk to Ryan about water in the wells. And we had a good discussion, and he said there's so many holes in the aquifers around here. What you do is going to.
Okay. Thank you, Don. And future meeting agenda items, no discussion or action. Kim,
I have none.
Brandon, none. Carrie,
None.
Don.
None.
I also have none. We have reached the end of our noticed agenda. The meeting is adjourned. Ryan, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. And thanks, Mike.
That was,
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
You know, Don, we could put
Thank
in
you all.
our, at every well, get rid of that salt. Totally, only 3 to 4